Me, 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 me. Okay, we're gonna get started. So, I'm Deja, just to start. You can say who you are.
My name's Tanisha.
And we're gonna be talking about a book that we read. So, we can talk first about how we got started with the book club and then go into the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I saw a bunch of TikToks. I ended up on the book side of TikTok. And I saw a TikTok that had some recommendations for books that written by Black authors about like Black women and Black girl stories. And so I was interested, and so I just asked you if you wanted to read the book together. And yeah, that was our 2-person book club.
Mm-hmm. So, it was funny because I had written on my bucket list that I wanted to read a fiction book because I haven't read fiction since I was like 12. So, the fact that you came to me with the book club, I was just like, oh, that's weird, but I'm going to join in. And then when you said, oh, it's fiction, I was just like, oh, that's double weird. Mm-hmm. So, what was the book that we decided on?
So, we decided on The House of Eve.
Yay!
It's by Sadika Johnson.
So how we did it in book club form, every time we read a chapter, we would text each other emojis to signify that we read the chapter and our thoughts on the chapter. So I'm not sure if you want to like go into the emojis or do we just want to like give an overview of the book?
I mean, we can go into the emojis.
Okay.
I actually really liked that idea, the emojis idea. Because it's just easier than like having to recap every single chapter with words. And it's like some chapters we obviously did like talk more than just the emojis, but I just thought it was like a simple and easy way to like kind of understand what we were both thinking about the chapters.
Mm-hmm. And it was also easier for our schedule because sometimes I would be 3 chapters ahead or you'd be 4 chapters ahead and you were wondering like, what does this emoji mean? Or when you finally got to the emoji, you realized what it meant.
Yeah.
Like, I think I sent an eggplant and you were just like, not an eggplant.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was your overall thoughts of the book?
Overall, I actually thought I enjoyed the book. I thought that the 2 stories were gonna meet a lot sooner than the final chapter. But in general, I thought it was good. I thought like the storytelling of each person's journey was good, and I thought it was good to like have like deeper thought, like some of the things that we talked about. I think it touched on a lot of topics that like I used to think about probably more like when I was in school and stuff, but just like things with Black culture, things that Black women go through and stuff.
In terms of infertility, pregnancy?
Yeah, in terms of like pregnancy, in terms of like being in a white world, child. But just like those sort of topics, and just actually learning about some of the things that used to happen. Like the whole point of House of Eve is like they used to send unwed women to this house to like secretly give birth. I never knew, like as I was reading it, I thought it was like fiction, like she had just made all of that up. It wasn't until we got to the end, the whatever it's called.
I think it's epilogue.
Maybe. Whatever. When we got to the epilogue, when she was saying that like this is something that she actually researched and like found was a real thing, I was just like, whoa, like so much I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. Fiction for me is a difficult read because there's so much happening in the world, and to read about Dungeons and Dragons just doesn't really make much sense to me. So the fact that it was historical fiction and rooted in fact pulled me in. From my perspective, honestly, I did not realize it was 2 different stories until you like pointed that out. I was just like, why is there so many names? So there's Ruby, Rudy or Ruby?
It's Ruby.
So Ruby, I call her like the down sister. And then there's Eleanor, who's just like, oh my goodness, what is wrong with Miss Eleanor? Everything is wrong with Miss Eleanor. Ugh. Then we have Shimmy, who's like, he's Jewish and he's white and he's dating Ruby, or he had relations with Ruby. And then we have Mr. Pride.
Yeah.
Yes.
William
Pride, who comes from a well-off family, and Eleanor marries into the more well-off family, but she's just complaining about him being well-off. Like, what is your issue?
A Debbie Downer. Like, look at the blessings around me. Oh my god. She's just like always like, but I'm poor. They don't accept, like, no one is doing anything. Like, sometimes, yes, I get it. Like, they weren't as, like, receptive of you, but at a certain point, like, you're just doing it to yourself. Like, I feel like she was excluding herself from their group because of her own preconceived notions of them.
Yeah, I felt like she was definitely projecting, especially some of the times they were just minding their own business, and she's just like, oh, they're excluding me. I'm the black sheep of this new family that I've been forced into. Nobody forced you to marry William. Like, you could have gone anywhere with anyone. And we learned later that she had a previous baby with another man. And it's just like, oh, we'll talk about secrets later on, but I was just like, you've lived a life and you chose this life. So don't complain when you're in the life.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think there was like one scene in particular where she was, at this point they had already been married for some time, and they went to some event. I don't remember. I think it was like a doctor's event or whatever. And everyone is just saying hello to her and William. They're like normally greeting her. And she's like, I'm just going to go sit in the corner. Girl, what's wrong with you? Mix and mingle. Like, at this point, like I said, I feel like she was doing it to herself. But yeah, I thought I was going to like Eleanor in the beginning because it was like, okay, like, yeah, my parents sacrificed so much for me to be at Howard. She was like doing her thing academically. She was working, like she was doing everything she should have and like could have to like be able to excel. But child, it just turned into a woe is me story. Like that whole like how I saw it was like, oh, like that's so inspiring, or like not even inspiring, but just like that's great that like they were able to do that for her, and like she's able to provide for herself, get through what she wants to get through, and like kind of create her own path and career. It like flipped, and it was like instead of that being a positive, she like turned it into a negative, which I didn't like about her.
But I felt like she did that to a lot of instances throughout the book. She's just very pessimistic, and I really wonder where that stemmed from, because we could pinpoint Ruby's woes to her mother or to her upbringing, but Eleanor, we don't really know much about her, and we didn't really get much information about her until she had like that mental breakdown and then returned home. But then even then we still never got much information. But again, I didn't realize we were listening to two stories until the middle, so I was just piecing together information as we got progressively through the story.
Yeah, no, we didn't get a lot of Eleanor's background at all, now that you say that. But yeah,
okay, to pivot, I think a lot of the book was rooted in birthing children, being a mother, being a parent, things like that. So from your perspective, do you want children? Has your opinion on children changed after reading this book? Where do you stand?
No. Well, one, I don't think that I want children personally. Two reasons. One, I just feel like it's such a toll on your body. Like, I don't know if I'm willing to put myself through that. Like, this is gonna sound bad, but you be seeing the pregnancy nose and like just so, not even just that, like,
hey, that's
Ew. But just like all that your body has to go through, and even after the child, like your body is never the same again. So that's like a big commitment for me, I think. And then beyond that, like the responsibility of like raising and taking care of a child just seems very overwhelming for me. And it's just, if I was to have a kid, I would definitely like, I know that I would say like, make sure you choose the right partner, but like that's really big for me, because I don't see a world where I can, let me not even say that. I would not want to do it on my own.
I completely agree with a lot of what you were saying. I feel like after reading The House of Eve, I wanted children, specifically a girl, but I was also reading a book titled What My Mother and I Don't Talk About while I was also reading this book, and I feel like it definitely changed my perspective on me wanting children. I feel like certain people want children to fill a void within themselves. Like, oh, I'm gonna have a baby because I want someone to love me, but get a dog. No disrespect, but get a dog. Like that, don't put that burden on a kid. And it's also a lot of responsibility in terms of raising a kid because they come out with their own personality, and then people project their personality onto a kid. And I just feel like sometimes you could do your best and your best is not good enough for that kid.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of layers to parenting, and I feel like I have a lot of work to do on myself, and I like my life too much enough to give it up for a kid at this point.
I agree. I think too that reminds me of like, I could personally never understand people whose like only aspiration in life is to be a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I get obviously how being a mother is like one of the most beautiful things. Like obviously you're giving life and you have your child, but like there's so much more to life, I feel like, than just being a mother, especially as a woman. And I think in this book too, like some things that a lot of people don't even consider is that like some people just can't, like your body won't let you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so like thinking about like as much as people aspire to that, like what do you think of if do people even think like, oh shoot, what if I actually can't like be that?
Yeah.
And like how they handle it, I don't know.
That's a good point. So in my program, I do mental health counseling, and it never occurred to me what happens in the adoption facilities or whatever, or what it's like to be an adopted kid. So it was around Father's Day, and we were all talking about like, oh, we have a group project, and we're not going to meet this day because it's Father's Day. And one of my peers said, oh, well, I don't have a father because she aged out of foster care. So it just like never occurred to me that those things happen, and some people don't have parents, which is like an interesting thing to consider.
I guess I never really thought about that much either. I think that's too like probably a lot of our privilege coming from like, I wasn't in foster care. I don't want to speak for you because
I wasn't in foster care.
I don't know. I didn't want to speak for you, but anyways, yeah, coming like that's like part of our privilege that a lot of people probably take for granted too. I think most people come from homes with at least one, if not two parents.
Yeah, and I think we both come from families with two parents. So yeah, that's like another layer of privilege.
Yeah. That
I don't know. It affords us a different luxury than people who come from one parent or two parent or no parent households.
Yeah, definitely. And too, like I think the support of like other family members too, like grandparents, aunts, whoever, is like a luxury too, because right, like people who are in foster care and age out, like they don't have parents. Are they still connected to their other relatives? Other family members? I just feel like one thing, and I think this came up in the book too, is like you really need like a village when you're like raising a child in life period, but when you're raising a child, that definitely comes in big. I think we saw that too with like Rose Pride, and even Eleanor's mom too, like when she needed to go home or like her mom was there for her, and she was even planning for her mom to come help with the baby too. So I don't know how people do that.
Yeah, also Ruby, I really liked her aunt. Her aunt was, she means business, especially during the scene where Ruby was attempting to get an abortion, but it just didn't go over well. But her aunt was pushing for her to get an abortion, even though somebody just passed away on the table. So I felt like in that instance, do you choose your future or a child or your life at that point?
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot more people, like not in our generation, but in older generations, had to make that decision, especially with like abortion not being legal for a long time. And speaking of secrets, they probably just never say anything. Like I've had conversations with people in older generations who literally be like, yeah, my friends died like trying to get an abortion and stuff because they didn't have a safe way to do it. And to know that like someone that I know is friend, like it's so close, and I just found out like as a 20-whatever-year-old person, I would have never guessed that before then.
Yeah. And this is a long-standing practice. Like even during slavery times, they would eat the root of cotton trees to have like a forced induced pregnancy. i.e. an abortion. So it's just like, ugh, ugly history. And I felt like the House of Eve really zeroed in on how ugly the history is and how it kind of manifested in the I think that was 1950s.
I think so. Yeah. And it seems like maybe potentially, who knows, that we might be reverting back to that.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Honestly, who knows? But how do we prepare for that if we do revert back?
I was having this conversation with someone else the other day, and it's like living in Massachusetts, that's also a privilege because we have a lot of rights that other states wouldn't. Like, for example, abortion. Like, now that it's decided by the states and not a federal right anymore, like, we don't have to think twice about going to one of the mini clinics that are like here. But if you were living somewhere in like the rural South, like, now you got to fight for your life to try to figure out how you're going to get out of here, how you got to figure it out, and that's hard.
Yeah.
Because it's not as accessible as it used to be.
Yeah. I think you bring up a larger conversation about the privileges of Massachusetts. I made a video on TikTok. Okay, so we have like access to many resources as Bostonians and Massachusettsians. But when it comes to racism, our racism is a lot different than a lot other places. And as somebody that was in the METCO program, do you want to talk about that? Or give your experience on that?
Yeah, I feel like, so my experience is definitely different. I think, like, I went through METCO and it was fine. Like, I didn't have any blatant racist acts, like, done towards me. No one ever called me the N-word. No one was, like, ever, like I said, blatantly racist to me. But it's, like, the small things of, like, the microaggressions and, like, oh, God, this is so embarrassing. But I should call them out by name, but I won't. It was so
call them out by name. Say names or keep it on the playground.
But like the boys in the METCO program, and I think it was reflective of kind of like the trends of the school we went to, like a PWI. They literally, this was in the 2000s, so we're not in the 50s and 60s. And they're still trying to run us by the paper bag test to like determine our attractiveness.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Honey.
Wait, so did they actually bring up a paper bag towards you?
No, they wouldn't. They would like, I mean, at this point we were still kind of like using paper bags for lunch and stuff. So everyone kind of knew, like, you know what the color of a paper bag is.
Yeah.
So they would always just be like, oh no, like, the so many like dark jokes. And it's like, honey, you are black. Like, and I don't mean just like you're black, like, no, you are like 5 shades darker than me, and you're over here trying to judge me, like you're trying to determine my attractiveness based off of your own like self-hate.
Oh, so it was between students, like of the same race.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's what I was saying, like I feel like it was just reflective of the like larger PWI, because like white standards is like skinny, blonde, or whatever, I just don't even want to say your shape, but like straight hair pretty much. And what, I'll just say that for looks. And so like they internalized that. Like the white boys weren't approaching us, and that was like, we knew that wasn't gonna happen. But I think the black boys definitely like internalized that, and then they were actually more blatant, like racist towards us. They started like spewing that back at us like tenfold. I feel like they felt like they could because they were black and not white. But like I remember some like small things in METCO too, like a parent in particular I remembered like had made a comment like, why are we spending our tax dollars for them to be here, or something like that. In
front of you, or just out in the ether?
It was out in the ether. It was like he like commented that on a newspaper article or something.
Bold.
Right, and because literally has your name and like
is this you?
Like, I was so confused. But that was that, and I definitely think METCO for sure like challenged my identity and like how I saw myself as a black person, black girl in particular. It was really hard. I was just talking about this the other day, like trying to assimilate into that was really hard. I feel like I did a lot that I could, to do that. Personality wise, like I feel like I definitely toned myself down. Like one of my longtime friends, old friends, you know Juan.
Yeah. Of course I know Juan.
Yeah, he like when we were talking, this was years ago.
He was in the METCO program?
For a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
He switched out in high school.
Okay.
He didn't want to
be subjected to that, yeah.
He was telling me how, like, when we were younger and, like, in camp and stuff, how I was so much more, like, outgoing and, like, probably, like, more sure of myself. And then, like, comparing that to how I was when I was, like, older, like, high school. Yeah, like, around the high school age. He was like, you're not that anymore. Like, he can just, like, tell that, like, I lost that. And I think when I, like, reflect back on it, it was definitely, I attribute it because of my METCO experience, because I was always taught, like, you know, like, you're not, like, you can't be the loud black girl. So I would quiet myself down, and, like, literally, and anyone would say, like, oh, you're so shy, like, you're talking about, like, that's not I feel like that's a newer trait because of that.
Or a defense mechanism. Yeah,
exactly. I was trying to protect myself, basically. I felt like I had to prove that I was smart. Like straighten your hair, like the whole perm to the chap.
You had a perm?
I had a perm for a long time, up until 10th grade in high school.
I think your points and story relate to Ruby. You guys share a birthday as well. I feel like Ruby was very hyper aware of her blackness and how it impacts how she navigated the world, but she was more cautious in terms of what she did. I don't think she kind of reduced her personality, but she was just like, oh, I can't do this because this will happen because of my blackness. But then when she was with Shimmy didn't have to think about that stuff. So from your perspective, what did you have to unlearn in terms of being in the METCO program to kind of get to the point where you're at right now?
I had to unlearn so much, and I didn't until I was in college, which I hated because it was another PWI. And I'm like, how the hell did I do this to myself? But I had to unlearn so much. Like, a big moment for me, and this is going to probably seem so shallow, is literally just, like, wearing my natural hair. I remember the first time I ever did, I like came out of my dorm room like with my hood on, like trying to like hide.
The drama.
Literally the drama.
The drama.
But like the reactions to my hair was literally why I did that. But that was such a pivotal moment for me, and it wasn't until I think I became a Black Studies minor that I really started like doing a lot of unlearning, and just like thinking, like doing all the reflections that I did, like, oh, like I really like muted myself to fit into this new culture. And so just like thinking about one, just like what was I missing by not being involved or more involved in like Black culture, and like the issues that were happening around me, because to be honest, I like tried to ignore a lot of them.
Yeah.
Or it felt like more like oh well, it didn't happen to me, so like that was like the way I tried to protect myself or like distance myself from some of the like Blackness in my community. But I just had to like start thinking like, girl, that's fucked up. And like, like let's just remember that is fucked up. And it is affecting you because look at you, like
you're not yourself.
Exactly.
You're a shell of a person.
And I remember my Black Studies minor professor one year, she literally was just like talking to me, and I was the same way in her class, like a little more reserved, whatever, but I like participated and stuff. But at the end of the year, she was just like, I just want you to know that like I see you, and like I know that she basically like called me out on everything. She was like, but like I see you, and like you're not like this invisible person that you try to make yourself to be. Like you should really like step into yourself. And that like really resonated with me, I think even till like today. Because it's just like so she was also a Black woman, and so like,
I assume that.
Yeah.
The I see you, give
right?
that away.
Okay. White people don't say that.
No.
We see each other.
We see each other. We good.
Yeah, but it was just like Black woman to Black woman. She was just telling me that like I thought it was really big for me for her to be like you're more than what you're trying to make yourself seem.
Yeah, or you're more than what they subjected you to.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. So all great points. So, with that experience of having to unlearn and understanding what you had to go through, you don't want kids. But hypothetically speaking, if you were to have kids, would you make them go a different route or would you put them on the same route as you did?
I think that I would. I think that I wouldn't mind putting my kid through METCO. This is like a recent change. Like before the last few months, I always would say like, no, not putting them through that. Don't want them to have to experience what I did. But I think lately I've been thinking that like I wouldn't mind having gone through it myself. Like my mom never went through METCO.
Mm-hmm.
She had like similar experience, but like I don't think she was as active, and I probably didn't share with her as much like what I was going through, and so like she didn't really like guide me through that at all. So I think if I were to put my kid through METCO, I would definitely want to be able, like be more active and be able to help them like navigate their identity more.
And how would you do that? Because you said your mom didn't have the resources or information to guide you, so you have that. So how would you do that? Oh, also your background, like you. I don't know if you want to share this, but you went to Harvard to do like educational policy, and then like that's pretty much your background. So you have the tools. So what are you gonna do with them?
Yeah. So when it comes to my kid, one thing that I would say is like if I'm gonna put them in METCO, I'm gonna make sure that they have like some sort of deep connection to the community, like back
to the culture.
Exactly. Back to the culture. Because I feel like it's definitely good. Like I didn't have that, and so I literally have never been outside of like church in my family in a majority Black situation.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure my kid has that in some way, shape, or form. So that's one thing I would do. I think too, kind of like, I think just educating them as well on like is. You only learn so much in any K through 12 system, and so like being able to supplement their education with like what is actually true about like Black history and making sure that it's celebrated and so that they feel confident in like their skin and like who they are and knowing their history too. So it's not like they have to feel like they have to assimilate into this situation because you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I can think of right now. And you're not getting a perm.
Yeah, my mom at a very young age said if we got a perm, she would like beat us. So that's why I have such luxurious hair. But yeah, my experience is completely different from yours. I have been rooted in Blackness since the womb. So I didn't really have to unlearn anything. I think most of my unlearning came from, I guess, the happenings of my home, but that really wasn't rooted in race. It was more rooted in like trauma, I guess. But yeah, I feel the same sentiment. I feel like as Black people, we have this idea that we have to kind of align ourselves with whiteness and white spaces to succeed, but I don't feel that way, and I hope that other people get to a point where they feel that way. Yes, you get access in these spaces, but that's pretty much how it's set up throughout history. I feel like in understanding the formation of America and how it's more like take, and gatekeep, we have been kept out of these resources, even though we created these resources. So it's just like, I want to get to a place where we don't have to feel like we need to buddy or just kind of like insert ourselves into spaces where we aren't necessarily welcomed or wanted. Like even in being in this space, I called it the master's quarters, but I feel like when you see resources, take advantage of them. Even if you feel like you're not welcomed, or obviously if you feel unsafe, don't put yourself in a situation where you're unsafe, but take advantage of the resources that are presented to you. Because oftentimes, again, they're gate-kept.
Yeah.
And also align yourself with Black-owned businesses. Like I did Taekwondo, that was Black-owned. A lot of the shows that I watch are Black-owned, but I feel like because my identity is so secure and so strong in my Blackness, I take it for what it is and I see the beauty in it. Like some people watch Good Times and they're just like, oh, well, this poor Black family, the poverty-stricken Black people. But I see, from my perspective, I say like, that's a beautiful Black family.
Yeah.
Or even when you look at Rudy's, what is her name?
Ruby.
Even when you look at Ruby's life, you're just like, oh, this destitute Black girl. But from my perspective and from our common perspective, she's like super strong, super driven, super goal oriented, solution focused. So I was just like, it's all about how you flip the perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you said something. Oh, what you said about like take advantage of the resources. That's literally the only reason why I would send my kid to METCO is because like I don't want to like take strip them of having the resources and opportunities that are unfortunately like almost exclusively afforded to white people.
Yeah.
So like if there's an opportunity for them to go, absolutely like go take advantage of that. But like you said, like definitely need to connect back to like the black culture. But also too, I think another point you brought up was like how Ruby is so strong. And I always go like back and forth on that because I think like black women are always put into that category of like you have to be strong, or like it was like everyone comes like, wow, you're so strong. Ooh, I hate when people like always talk about like how what is it, like, oh my gosh, you have so much grit or whatever it is, like
persistence,
that whatever the word you want to use, and they try to flip it as a compliment specifically with black people. And it's like, I don't want to have to do that. Like, I can be soft. I cannot be strong. I don't want to have grit.
Very demure. Very demure.
Literally, like, is there ever a time when I can just, like, not have to get through a challenge? Can I just, like, have it easy for once? Like,
yeah.
I hate that, like, narrative that people try to put on black people. Like,
yeah, I feel like it's a backhanded compliment. They're like, you're so strong, so let me beat you to a pulp just to see how strong you are. Let me see just how strong you are. So I definitely get that. And it can be very exhausting. But one thing I've discovered that I'm not going to do anything that I don't want to do. And I feel like a lot of jobs, organizations will literally take advantage of you simply because they can and others have allowed it. So when I get in there and I start making demands and like, oh, I don't do that, or I'm not going to do that, or you didn't say that in the interview, so I'm not going to do that. They're just like, who is this girl? Who does this girl think she is? So when people start asking, who do you think you are? You're probably on the right track. That's how I see it.
That's a good point. I like that. I think it's taken me a lot longer to get to that. And I realized it because the other day I was talking to my boss, and her one of my other coworkers were talking about like the universe and how like they feel they're so like they're in the right place at the right time, and like this is like the job that's right for them, and whatever going on and on. And then my boss like turned to me and she was like, do you feel the same? And I feel like in any other instance I probably would have lied and said, yeah, like totally agree, like I feel like, you know, the universe put me in the right spot. But in that moment I just felt like I couldn't. And so I was just like, no. It was fine. Like they started, like the coworker started laughing, and she was like, it's fine, like you don't have to feel that way. And it just felt good for me to be like, I don't have, like you said, I don't have to lie or like try to like fit into these like narratives or these spaces. Like I can be honest and like be authentic and be myself, and that's cool too. Like you don't have to do the most.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like to do temperature checks to see or gauge people. So when you step into a place or in a space for the first time, people want you to be like bubbly and in their face and super like conversational. So I will literally be the complete opposite to see how they react to it, to see what they want from me. Obviously, I'm not very standoffish. I'll give you conversation, but I'm not gonna give you a show. And I feel like there's a big distinction between wanting to get to know me and wanting me to put on a show for you. And I'm not a clown. I'm not gonna give you a show. So I feel like I think it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because I don't know how to play the game. As somebody who's gone through PWIs, I feel like you can play the game very well. One thing about it, I can't fake the funk. If I don't feel it, it's just not going to be.
Yeah. I think to your point, like, how I've gotten, like, through that and, like, being able to play the game, I guess it was like I just said, like, the way I protect myself was just, like, becoming this like super quiet person, because now no one expects nothing of me. Like if I don't want to talk, they're just like, oh yeah, she's just quiet, like I just don't want to talk to you. This is what it is. But no one like takes it like malicious or anything.
Yeah, so. I'm the complete opposite. They think that I'm like out to get them. They think that I want to destroy the company. So I'm just like, oh Jesus.
But I think too, like sometimes like that's good. I think a lot of companies aren't pushed the way that they need to be. And so like having that, like the way you are, a lot of companies probably need, and it's uncomfortable for them because they've never had it before. They don't know what to do with it either. But when has anything, like when you're trying to be productive and you're like changing something, most likely for the better, like it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I think, to go back to the secrets topic, I think that's why people keep a lot of secrets, or they kind of create a false reality of a situation because they don't like discomfort. I realize that people cannot sit with discomfort, and they will do anything to maintain a lie and to maintain a sense of comfort. So
yes,
pivot there.
Especially white people, because that's white supremacy culture.
Period. And we're gonna stop there. No, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we're gonna pivot to secrets. So how do you feel about secrets, just in general, and then we're gonna go to the context of family.
I feel like secrets are like buttholes. No, I do think everyone has a secret somewhere or another, like probably something that, even if it's just something that like you find embarrassing, you don't want other people to know, whatever. I think depending on what the secret is and the context, like determines, like, I don't want to say how bad it is, but like it could be bad if it's relevant to someone involved, or like I'm thinking of like relationships. Like if I have a secret that would impact you and I don't tell you, like that's kind of like shitty.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other end, I guess I kind of understand too that, like, I don't know, I think people don't want to feel bad, or people don't want to make other people feel bad, and that's why they keep secrets.
I feel like sometimes that's a cop-out though, because sometimes you're more worried about how the person will react towards you in reference to the secret, that you just kind of are not as mindful of how you're like handling the situation.
Mm-hmm. That's true too. I definitely think that's true. But like same thing, like with discomfort, like we were just talking about, people don't want to have to deal with the discomfort of whatever the person's reaction is.
So what do you think that is? Is it a sign of weakness? Is it a sign of strength, manipulation? What are we thinking here?
I think that is probably, if anything, it's probably like selfish.
Gut punch. Elaborate.
Because like you're not really concerned about how they would feel. You're concerned about how you are going to feel if and when they react.
Hello.
So
repeat that again. No, I'm just kidding. Yes. Run that back. Rewind. Yes, that's exactly how I feel. Because I think, again, to my point earlier, some people are so comfortable with living a lie because they want to protect themselves, and that's all they're after. Self-protection. And I just feel like that's so selfish.
Yeah. What do you feel like? Do you feel like that is the case with, like, for example, Eleanor or even Ruby? Because, like, technically they have secrets, but do you feel like it's a selfish reason for them to keep the secret?
In a way, yes, because they were thinking about their future. Mm-hmm. Eleanor wanted a baby. She didn't necessarily think about how that will impact the child, because later on we see the child as a teenager and she's saying like, oh, my body's much fuller than yours, mm-hmm. even though you're my mother. And Eleanor can't say, oh, I picked you up at a institution.
Yeah. So
it's kind of like, yes, you want to protect the child, but you're also protecting yourself and keeping that secret. Mm-hmm. So again, that's selfish.
Yeah. And I think especially in Eleanor's case, like, you didn't even have to keep it a secret, because William was saying like, oh, let's just adopt, and like whatever, we adopted.
Yeah.
Who cares what people have to think? And she was so concerned with how people would view her that she was like, absolutely not. Like, went through this, we'll get into this later, but went through this whole elaborate plan and then got upset about the plan. Like,
blew the whole plan up.
Like, ma'am. But I think that was definitely selfish of her. If you were to adopt a kid, would you tell them that they were adopted at a young age, or would you wait until they're older?
I would wait until I know that they understand what I'm saying, because if you're like 5 or 6 and I say, oh, we went to like an institution and picked you up, I don't feel like they would understand it completely, but I would definitely make it a point to tell them. Mm-hmm. but I would kind of like sprinkle it in gradually without making them feel different.
Yeah.
But I would definitely let them know.
Yeah, I agree. I think age is important because, like, I wouldn't wait until they're too old. Like, I'm not gonna wait until you're 18.
Yeah.
Like,
Hey, you're adopted.
Well, like, definitely when they can understand, like, it doesn't mean like the love is any different or whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good point. I feel like in the context of certain secrets in adoption, I think some people don't want to tell the child that they're adopted because they don't want the relationship dynamic to change. So if you say, oh, I adopted you, I'm not your birth mother, you're afraid that they're going to go out and find their birth mother and abandon you. I was watching a movie, The Other Mother, or not, it's The Other Woman or The Other Mother, something like that. The girl from Half and Half is in it, but that was pretty much the premise of the movie. Really good movie.
How do you feel, this is a little off topic, but how do you feel about white parents adopting black children? Dun, dun, dun.
Cut the tape. Okay. On, I guess, the surface level, I think it's great because that kid is getting a home. But I'm going to take it to TikTok. There was a man who adopted a black baby. And I saw the video before it went viral. He was like, hey, I just adopted this black baby. Can you tell me how to do its hair? Completely negligent. That is so negligent because you took the time out. The adoption process is very thorough. Like, it's a long, drawn-out process. You had all that time to pick and choose. You wanted a black baby, but didn't want to do the due diligence of researching how to care for and nurture that black baby.
Yeah.
Wrap it up. Send the baby back or send it to somebody else.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I see a lot of those kinds of TikToks, and it's like it always takes a black woman to come in and save the day. Like, our backs are tired. Carry this country. But like actually like that, and it's like you as a white person, like there's never a world where you can relate to like what they're going to experience.
Yeah.
And to like how I think if you are going to adopt a black person, you literally have to figure out how you are going to like communicate that to them, and also still like they're still a child, so you have to help them like figure it out. And so like I think it's a lot more goes into it than people think when they're just like, I'm gonna help. And that whole like fucking attitude was like, I'm gonna help this poor black child. Like you didn't have to like.
Yeah. I feel that, like, a similar sentiment to biracial kids. I think it's a bit confusing for biracial kids, most of them, some of them, because some of them, due to the way they look, benefit in a way from white privilege, but they're just, like, on the cusp of it. So they're not really entirely benefiting from it, but also you're black, technically, or a person of color, but you're like on the cusp of it. So it's just like you're in the in-between, and it's like so confusing. So I was just like, if I were to have a biracial kid, I don't know how I would have that conversation. Yeah. Like, oh, you're black, but you're also this. You're like, it's just all over the place. So I just feel like, I think that's also why people are just like, oh, I'll date only black people. Because it's just like less of a hassle to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But then you also have to have conversations about, hey, this is what it's like being black in America, and watch out for this. So it's just like a lot of conversations need to be had.
I agree. Do you think, so bringing it back to the book, do you think that Eleanor or William will have that conversation with their child? Because their child's
half white.
Half white.
Half Jewish at that.
Do they even know that?
No, because they said the information is locked, so they don't know that. But she has green eyes, so
yeah.
But they were just like, oh, that's on our dad's side. So I think they're gonna keep up with the lie.
Another secret, of course.
But then it's kind of like, I saw this other girl's video on TikTok who said she didn't know she was half black. So she looked biracial, but her hair was a lot kinkier. And she was just like, oh, I didn't know how to maintain my hair because nobody could help me maintain my hair. So I feel like that's going to be Ruby's case, or the child's case. She's going to be like, well, my hair is a lot looser. Like, where does that come from? Or she's going to have like a lot of questions, and they're going to have to continue to lie.
Yeah.
And that makes me think of Kerry Washington's book, Thicker Than Water. She was a product of, what is it? In vitro.
Okay.
I think that's what it's called. or IVF, where they took somebody else's sperm and put it in the mother, but they didn't tell her that until she was a lot older. So it was like eating the father up, and then eventually you just decided to tell her. So it's just like you're living a lie, and you have to keep up with the lies, and the kids are picking up on the lies, but they're not quite sure if it's because of them or if it's just like something is askew. So it's just like, don't lie. That's the problem with secrets. You have to continue to lie.
Yeah. Slippery slope.
Very.
Slippery slope.
Okay.
Pivot. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of like the actual House of Eve, like the
hospital?
Yeah, the little prison place.
I felt like there was a lot of trauma bonding, and I just wish it wasn't so secretive, because a lot of healing could have transpired if they would have continued communication outside of the house. That way they could stay connected and talk about what they experienced, especially the people that go into, like, I'm gonna call it the chokey from Matilda, because you don't really know like what, I don't remember what the room name was, but like once you go into that room, it's because you're being punished. So it's just like a lot transpired in that house, and then they just go back into the world like nothing happened.
Yeah, I was literally just thinking that like the trauma that these people are going to freaking experience, like being every single one of them, even like Ruby, who knew that she like did not want to have this kid, like she knew it was gonna mess with her future, whatever, like having her child still at the end of the day like ripped from her was like
literally
traumatized. It's always gonna be traumatizing. And then it's just like against your will, and then literally, like you said, you either like you just go back into the world like nothing happened, or you potentially like, I don't know, die in that room or whatever.
Or lose your mind. A lot of them were literally losing their mind.
That too, literally. I
forget the character's name, but she worked in a house, and the homeowner, who was a white man, was I don't know how do I say this, essaying her pretty much, and that was how she had the babies.
Yeah.
And we don't know if she's gonna be sent back to that house to continue to have babies and kind of keep this cycle.
Because she did say that wasn't her first time.
That was her second kid with the man. But then we also had a conversation about how the wife was like blaming her for having the children, like, oh, you're a slut because you're sleeping with my husband. It's not by choice. She's not doing that because she wants to. She's doing it because of force and the power dynamic. So it's just like, ugh, again, ugly. So ugly.
So ugly. And too, I think like this book and the conversations that we had, like the one you just said, like illuminates so much about how we, like where we are, like how we got to where we are today. And like thinking about how like the stereotypes of Black women, like literally like promiscuous and like, I don't know, just like promiscuous is a good word, and just like how they're like, we'll take your man and stuff like that. And it's like, this all happened because of bitter white women who didn't want to admit that their men were attracted to Black women, forcefully taking or having sex with Black women. Putting that on us is crazy.
T. Yeah, a lot to unpack. Like, even if we think about it, without Black women, there wouldn't be an America, because we were bearing the children. And it's, again, the cycle. Like, without Black women, you couldn't give birth to Black children, i.e. Black slaves or enslaved individuals. And then trickle down, now we're being raped and creating biracial children, which is even more confusing. Some of them are in the house, some of them are on the field. So it's just like so many dynamics that, I don't know, like, where do we go? Like, there's so much to unpack. Where do we start the unpacking? Or do we like, I don't want to say do we unpack it, because I think it needs to be unpacked, because it's so much stuffing. Like, we're literally clamored in the suitcase with padlocks on the things. So it's just like, ugh. Yeah. Goodness gracious.
I think the question I have is like, once you do unpack, like, what do you do with it? Like, what do we do with all this information?
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, that sucked. Like, it still sucks. What are we gonna do with this knowledge? Because, well, I wouldn't say it's widely known. I guess not that much, but like, people know. and
they just choose to ignore it.
Yeah, or downplay it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But one of my, I'm gonna call her my classmates, she made the distinction between being racist or just like broadly racist and being anti-black, and that literally blew my mind because anti-black is zeroed in on a targeted attack, while racist could be like anything, or when you say POC, that could be anything.
Yeah,
but when you say black,
yeah,
I'm pointing at you. So it's just like, let's get clear on what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Let's not, I think it's really important to understand why we weren't allowed to read, because words are so important. I could finesse anything just by the way I manipulate words. And you could, like, even in, I forget the book, 1984, about dystopian society. Okay, yeah. So they have this idea of words and, I haven't read this book since high school, but second speech or something, where you like manipulate the words to mean something different than what it actually means. And I feel like that is literally America. You say one thing and it means something else. Like project management, I'm gonna clue you in on this email. Like, just say I'm going to include you in the email. You have to talk in parable and talk long-winded. Just say what you want to say.
Also, white culture. I have so much to say about white culture because when I was at my last job, I did a lot of like DEI trainings with them. And one thing that we focused on was like white supremacy culture. And it's like, one thing that's so, and I see this every time I see this in like a job that I'm like, this is so freaking cringy. One, like you were saying, get to the point, like say what you have to say, be direct. Like we don't gotta do
the
run around or whatever.
They don't like that.
And secondly, so they call it like the white supremacy culture, like they specifically call it is like worship of the written word. And it's like if it's not written or if it's not written a certain way, then they like don't add any value to it. And that's so anti-black. It's just a lot of anti-cultures. A lot of our cultures are oral because we couldn't read or write, and so like that's carried down to us. And it's like I for me personally, I was like, I feel like I can get so much more out of I'm gonna just come up to you and say, hey, can you do this, or hey, I need you to do, or whatever, opposed to like, oh, let me write this long lengthy email like, hey, I'm just gonna, and like
all the best, or like with so much fluff, like we don't need all that.
And it's just like, it's okay, like what we're saying is the same.
Yeah, very true. Where did DEI come from? I feel like as of recently I've been hearing that, but I didn't hear it a lot before. I know it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it just popped up out of nowhere. All of a sudden jobs have DEI this, DEI that. So where did that come from?
Post George Floyd.
Okay.
Yeah, that job market like boomed after
the DEI. Do you find that it's primarily people of color that are leading it, or the latter?
I do actually find that it's usually Black women. I think. And it's hard too because like I've talked about this too with someone else, with one of my old coworkers and mentors. She did a lot of the work with me, and it's like it's hard because you don't want to take on the burden of like feeling like you have to educate everyone, especially on like cultural matters. Like that's not your job, it's not your responsibility. The information is out there, like people can find it and very easily, like go do that. There's no excuse for you to be ignorant, but at the same time, like it's so like close to your heart and close to your experience that you a lot of times like you just end up taking on that work anyways. And so it's like at least for us, we were saying it's like hard because it's like we don't want to be like the carrier of the torch, like
Coco Goffman.
Yeah, but like at the same time, like, oh my god, if we didn't, what would be the outcome?
Who knows? I was having that conversation in one of my classes and they almost literally stoned me. I was just like, I understand that change needs to be done, but it's kind of like eating the elephant. Like the more you chew at it, the more you have to go. And they were just like, but it needs to get done. Somebody needs to do it. And I was just like, but I'm tired. We've been doing this for a long time. Like, can't they do it? They messed it up.
Literally.
Let them fix it. But they were just like, no. And I understand that's not going to happen. But we're tired. I'm tired. So, yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
But I think we've been talking for a little while now, so we can close out. What direction do you want to go into to close out?
Let's bring some Black joy into this conversation.
I thought that was pretty joyful, rooted in truth.
I know, I agree. I always find joy in these kinds of conversations. But, let's end it with some Malcolm X. I don't know what.
Do you want me to rap?
Wait, why did you say rap? I said Malcolm X on DMX.
I don't know where to go with that. Will you be Malcolm X and I'll be Martin Luther King?
Okay, I'll end it with we Black people. We need to invest in ourselves. We need to be who we are. Mm-hmm. We don't need to assimilate into this weirdo country or just society in general. I just feel like there's so much joy in being Black. Mm-hmm. We didn't talk about this, but we just talked about so much things and like heavy things, like real topics, and still like we were laughing throughout the entire podcast and stuff, like finding moments of joy. And I think that is such like a Black trait. Like we've gone through
hell,
we run through the mud, and still we can like laugh and enjoy ourselves. And I feel like that's for me, that's like the most beautiful thing about Black culture.
I love that. Well, Candy, maybe we can find a studio in Puerto Rico and go lay some beats. That's really good. I love all of that. To my point, I'm going to keep mine short and cute and sweet. I would say, very demure. I would say, wake up every day knowing that you are the standard.
I'm sorry. I saw that on your TikTok and I was like, I love, like, yes, because yes.
And I say that because the girls are just getting hip to Black lip liner and lip gloss, bonnets, the African net sponge, like, hello. So it's just, everything we do is light years ahead of what's being done. And then they take it and say, oh, this is the new thing. Like, they'll probably call the African net sponge the bath. I don't even know, like, something stupid. But, yeah, we are the standard. In every space you get into, you deserve to be in there. And if you have to curse somebody out, let it be done. Let it be. Let it be law. Let it be good. Don't talk about their mother like I did. But just give them the business. Because people are going to try you. So give them something to remember. And we'll close out there. Do you just want to give them your socials or something? Stay connected?
Sure. Yeah, Denasia again. You can find me on the interwebs at forever_Riley, Riley.
Any business endeavors that we should know about?
Follow Duma Services. It's a transportation company, and more business endeavors to come for myself, but we'll keep you posted.
Period. And then we're gonna close out there. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Oh, that was good.
That was really good.
I have like a dent in my head now. 57 minutes. Okay, we can go eat now.